Good morning. This is 1 in 36, a presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. 1 in 36 is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And with me today is Sheletta Brundidge, who is author, mother, advocate, and probably many other things. Sheletta, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It is just quite a joy to be a part of this podcast and to share our family story.
I love that. I am often in the position with this podcast of being able to, just like you're about to have family members tell us the story of who they are and who their family is and why our listeners really need to stop for a minute and pause and reflect and listen. So I'm looking forward to hearing yours. Why don't you just take it away and tell us about yourself and your family?
Well, folks call me the autism mom, not because I have 3 kids on the spectrum, but I'm an advocate for parents who have kids with special needs. I found out my son, Brandon, was autistic when he was 3 years old. He is now 11, right?
Okay.
And I had never heard of it. In fact, when I told my mom, she put an R in it and she was telling people he was artistic, right?
Okay. Yep.
And what I found was that, a lot of parents who have kids with autism, they were almost in the closet, embarrassed to talk about
it.
Isolated. Bring the kids out, very isolated, very deep down in the hole. And so I couldn't find a network, especially in communities of color. For Black mothers, it's almost a sense of shame. Like people are like, well, what's wrong with you? Why your kids got special needs? Were you drinking while you were pregnant? Did you do something? Were you on drugs? Did you take your vitamins? Did you get any prenatal care? And so it's easier, right? Because Black women already have this type of racism and scrutiny to just retreat and go in the house and not come out, to stay isolated. Well, then your child doesn't get the help he needs. Your daughter doesn't get the services she needs. And so then what happens is when the child is 17 and they're graduating from high school and you see the white kids who are graduating and they're going to college and they're getting married and they're picking up a trade, you were like, well, how the white kids doing so well and our kids are not? Well, it's because we let shame and fear and intimidation and, a racist healthcare system drive us in the house. And we can't do that anymore. And so I have on purpose lived my life out loud, took scrutiny away from other Black women and pointed it at myself and used my family story for educational purposes.
Okay.
I talk about my children. I talk about our autism journey on a regular routine basis, any chance I get. I talk about the fact that I have 3 children with autism and I'm a wife and a mother and I'm not on drugs and I'm not on medical assistance and I didn't drink while I was having a baby and I have a PCP and an OB and my husband is degreed and graduated from medical school, and so am I. And so this happens to Black women and Black children, right? And so taking that stigma and the shame away so that other mothers who look like me, who have autistic children, can come out of the closet and get their children the help they need, get them into programs that are going to support them. And so we had to find a way to do that other than just tell the stories on social media, which have been very effective. And so my daughter Cameron went to school and she came home with this book from the library. And she said, well, Mom, I want to have white skin. And I said, why do you want to have white skin? She said, because all the kids in the children's books that I read in the library have white skin. And I said, oh, hell no. So I went marching down to the librarian and I was like, let me tell you something. We are going to make sure that you put more Black books about kids with autism in the library. And she said, Miss Brundidge, if you want kids to have books about Black children with autism, you're going to have to write them. And I took that as a challenge, right? And so I didn't know anything about writing books. I'd never written a book before in my life. I'm a broadcaster, 24 years in journalism. I have my own production company, ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com. It's a podcast network and production company. I don't know anything about publishing books. You asked me to write a column for the newspaper. I got you all day, but a book, a children's book? So I went to a boutique publisher here in Minnesota where I live and with an idea. Not a story flushed out, not a manuscript, no literary agent,
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she sat there with me and we talked and chatted and we worked on Cameron's story. And so we wrote Cameron Goes to School, the story about a little black girl who's nonverbal, who heads off to kindergarten for the first time. Right. And so the book was scheduled to come out April 1st, 2020 for Autism Awareness Month.
Oh.
But we already know. Girl, okay, you shaking your head, right? You like, oh hell, she got a book. Girl, we had partnered with Minnesota Children's Hospital for the big book launch. We had paid decorators. We had cakes. We had a queen chair for my daughter. Everything ready to go, and COVID happened.
Right.
And so the book launch was canceled. The book readings, everything we planned for the schools, because everything got shut down.
Sure.
And so my publisher came to me and she said, well, you're going to have to push the book launch back. And I said, well, why would I do that? And she said, because everything is closed and the only way to sell books is going to schools, going to libraries, and going to bookstores. And I said, well, that sounds very archaic. And Autism Awareness Month is in April. I'm not pushing it back because, at the time they were like, oh, this little virus going around. They're going to shut everything down to like August. And then the book can come out in August. I said, no, I don't think so. I think the book is going to come out April 1st, like we planned for Autism Awareness Month. And I'm going to sell these books online.
Okay.
And she said, how are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to tell my daughter's story about how she was a nonverbal girl with autism heading off to school for the first time. And we made her the hero because she was not afraid to go to school. It was the rest of us that were going crazy. Me, the husband, grandparents, her brothers, the neighbors. We were all scared and she was just fine. And guess what happened? Everybody else listened to their publicist. They pulled their books out.
Okay.
I was the only one who did not. And guess what parents were looking for when school closed? New books.
New books to read.
Got it. And guess what happened? My book became a #1 bestseller. Why? Because it was the only book that was out that was available. You type
and
in
I'm sure because it resonated with a lot of people. But yes, business savvy timing right there. Okay.
Right. And then so, you got more than one kid. If you got kids, you do something for one of them, you got to do something for all of them. So I had not planned on writing more than one book.
Okay.
I had planned on doing Cameron's book. Check that off my bingo card. Author. I can now say I'm a #1 best-selling children's author. I don't have to do anything else. Where you gonna go from #1? I mean, you gotta go. You're #1. And so, my son Brandon and Daniel and Andrew came up to me and they were like, "Mom, you got to write our books too." So
of course.
3 of them have autism. So I wrote Cameron's book. Cameron Goes to School. I wrote Daniel's book. Daniel Finds His Voice, because my son Daniel learned to talk through music. Everything we teach him through music.
Cool.
Other children did not need that, but Daniel did. In fact, Daniel was 4.5 years old, and his autism evaluation said no functional language.
You found
and
one.
I'm going to tell you how good God is to me. His ABA therapist from the Lovaas Institute came to me and said, the needle is not moving on Daniel. If he doesn't make progress, we can no longer justify to the insurance company that this is working. So we're going to discontinue. And I was like, oh, I don't want that, because I see what great strides it made in my other children. And so I just remember praying for God to give him a voice. And I was in the kitchen minding my own business, and my son came up to me singing Lil Nas X's Old Town Road.
Really?
Now, this boy couldn't be taught his name. He couldn't be taught the alphabet. He couldn't be taught how to say door or gate or tummy or ear or eye, or his whole foot broke and he couldn't tell us his foot was hurting, right? Wow. But he sang that song without being taught. And that's when I got the revelation that music is how you teach him. So every therapist, every teacher, everybody downloaded that song, and every country song that they could find with Billy Ray Cyrus, Miley Cyrus, all the Cyrus, Dolly Parton. I said, I got a little urban cowboy over here. So fast forward 5 years later, Daniel is 9. He is on a 10th grade level in math. And he is the best reader and speller in the house. All that was locked inside of him, and it did not come out except for music.
Amazing.
And so,
I'm still thinking about that moment in your kitchen. That must have been amazing.
Oh my God, girl, I was crying so hard I think I got dehydrated. And he was standing under me singing, and I just was crying and snotting and slobbering, and the top of his head was wet. because I had on one of those old school dusters. I'm an old lady. So I wear the dusters that the old ladies wear, that button that open. And so he was just standing there opening and closing the buttons while I was doing the dishes. And he started singing Old Town Road. And I thought, am I a crackhead? Did I do meth last night? Is this my nonverbal child singing a song that nobody taught him?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, all he had to do was hear this.
Yeah. Amazing. Can I interrupt you for one quick second? Does he still sing?
He still sings, and he is playing piano by ear. We didn't even know. Beautiful. He was sneaking down into the basement to play his father's piano because, to decompress and get away from the hell of having 4 kids and a crazy wife. My husband would go down to the basement and take virtual piano lessons during COVID. And so once COVID, lifted and we started getting out, he had not played that piano in a long time. And so Daniel would sneak down into the basement to play the piano. And so finally, I said, bring it up, bring it up and put it in his little station and let him play. And so he got in that station, and anything that he hears, he can play it by ear. So he's now in music lessons. Yeah,
that's fabulous. Sheletta, I think I'm enthralled by your story and the way you're telling it. We are going to need to take a quick break, so let's do that. And then when we come back, maybe you can tell us about the third book, and then I think maybe the most recent book, because I think you have now accomplished writing a book for all of your children. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more with Sheletta Brundidge. This is 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy. You know what? We should make an emergency communication plan. That way we're ready this year. At my dorm, we have emergency kits for earthquakes and wildfires, but I'm sure there's something more local I can send you with a link.
Okay. Smart.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Somewhere there's a river rushing through the woods while someone rushes through their day. There's a mountain looking up at the sky while someone looks down at their phone. A trail waiting to be walked while someone waits for a latte. This world is full of somewheres waiting for someone just like you. So go see yours at 154 national forests and 20 grasslands. And to learn more, visit nationalforest.org. The National Forest Foundation. See your somewhere.
And now, 1 in 36 continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs program presented by the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and I'm talking with Sheletta Brundidge, who is telling really wonderfully the story of her family, her passions, her your motivation, I think, and got through so far 2 of the books that you've written, 2 of the children's books. One is Cameron Goes to School. That was your first one, #1 bestseller on the children's book list. And then second one, Daniel Finds His Voice. We were just talking a little bit about Daniel and finding his voice through music, which I think is just absolutely wonderful. So far, I certainly wanted to read and have both of these books. So let's jump right back in and tell us what happened next.
Well, Daniel's book went viral. Lil Nas X found out about it. And next thing I know, Gayle King was telling everybody to go buy the book. So the book wasn't 7 days old when the distributor called and said, we got to do a reprint. And I said, what are you talking about? I just paid for 5,000 books. He said, all 5,000 books are gone. You have 7 books left. This was in 1 morning. I didn't believe
Wow.
him. I went over to the distribution center to look at the pallet where my book sat, and there was 7 books left. Amazing.
That's great.
And so I told my son, Brandon, I said, listen, Brandon's my middle child. He's also my favorite child. I tell the others, Brandon's my favorite. Be nice to Brandon because he's going to get all the money, right? Brandon is my absolute. I believe parents need to stop lying to their kids and tell everybody who the favorite child is. Don't let them find out during the wheel. Tell them now so they'll be ready for it. And so Brandon, I told Brandon, I said, listen, I am not going to do a book for you this year. I said, because there's some folks down south who are snatching books off the shelves that have brown and black children on them for no reason. And I don't want that fight. I've got to fight for my children who have autism. I got to make sure they got the services. I got to make sure that they got the resources. I got to fight at school. I got to make sure they are doing everything that's in that IEP. I got to fight the system to make sure that they got sensory rooms at football and baseball stadiums so that y'all can go see a basketball game if you want to, and then have a safe space to go and calm and quiet down. I don't want to have to fight the book ban group. I don't want it. So we're going to wait a year and maybe the book banning group will go away and then we can do your book. But I don't want it for myself, right? And he said, oh, okay, Mom, that's fine. So our family was on vacation in Houston. We actually won an RV. God is so good to us. We won an RV from Marcus Lamonis at Camping World. He was online looking for somebody to give an RV to. And everybody was saying, you should give it to Sheletta because she does such good work with kids who have autism. And so we got a Class A RV from Marcus Lamonis. Nice. All he wanted us to do was travel and promote traveling by RV to families who have kids with autism. Right.
Cool.
And so we were down in Texas, visiting my family, which is where I'm from, even though I live in Minnesota. And we were in the RV park. And my son, Brandon, his autism presents as shy and very reserved, very afraid. He won't bathe because he's afraid he's going to get sucked in the drain. He won't shower because he's afraid the water is attacking him. He won't leave. If he could just hold on to my leg or skirt tail, he would all day long. You know, he doesn't go to the ice cream truck because he's afraid that the person is going to kidnap him. He's that kid. He doesn't ride a bike, even though his legs are longer than the bike, because he's afraid that he's going to fall and hurt himself or die. That's that. He's that kid, right? He will not talk to strangers at all whatsoever. So we get down to Houston and he's like hanging out with people. He's like going up to complete strangers. Hi, I'm Brandon. Thanks for being my fan. And the people are like, oh my God, what's wrong with this kid? And I'm looking at the people like, I'm so sorry. Just be nice to him. He has autism. I don't know. And he was like, no, Mama, these people know me. Look, they're my fans. And I'm like, Lord have mercy, boy. These people don't know you. He was like, oh my God, all these people in Texas love me, Mama. I'm their favorite person. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, they have my signs everywhere. Don't you spot my signs? And I said, what sign are you talking about? He said, Mama, my signs are everywhere. All these people are just waiting for me to get here. I was like, Lord have mercy. I said, don't you go up to another person. He wanted to get in the pool. He walking up to strangers and talking to them. He riding on his brother's hoverboard. He's just got this swag and this confidence. And he's just like doing this thing. And I'm like, this is not my child. Now I'm scared. Instead of him being scared, I'm scared. So we're riding around the RV park on a golf cart. And he said, Mom, stop the golf cart. There's my sign. Do you see it? Do you spot my sign? It was a Let's Go Brandon flag.
Oh my goodness.
He thought that 172 people in an RV park in Houston, Texas were all just waiting for him to show up. These people had Let's Go Brandon yard signs. They had Let's Go Brandon bumper stickers. They had Let's Go Brandon flags. And at that moment, as a mother, I have a decision to make. Right. Either you're going to tell him what's really going on, or you're going to let it ride. I let it ride, girl. I let it ride, girl. And I said, baby, I don't spot a sign. I spot a book. We're about to make $1 million. This was on March the 8th. On April the 1st, our book came out.
Yeah.
We did a children's book in 4 weeks.
Wow.
Brandon Spots His Sign was a #1 best-selling children's book. It's my favorite book because the story is so authentic and so real, and people followed it on social media in real time. And the real Brandon Brown, where the slogan "Let's Go Brandon" came from, reached out to us, invited my son to a NASCAR race, put the fire suit on him. He got to walk out for driver introductions. He got to take the first lap in the car, and they put the cover of the book on the hood of the car.
Amazing. So, quick question. These stories are just phenomenal. I love how they relate to every story and every book. I want to leave as much time as we can also for the last one, for Andrew's book. But one question about Brandon when you left Houston and you came back to Minnesota, did all of that, you called it swagger, all of that confidence, and did it stick with him?
He still got it.
Really?
He got it. In fact, he stuttered. That boy no longer stutters. He no longer has to go to speech therapy. They said we can't justify to the insurance that he needs anything. He's speaking normally. All that fear and anxiety came off of him. And his book really is all about how to support kids who had autism, because that perceived show of support gave him everything he needed to get to his next level of greatness.
Amazing. Like the translation of just if everybody, if for every human had a Let's Go fan club. I mean, like, imagine
like, get you some
what everybody
Let's Go
would see
signs.
themselves. Sometimes it has to be reflected back to you, right? To see what's inside. Amazing. Okay. We have about 3 minutes left. I want it to be all about Andrew Does His Dance. Tell us that one.
Let's talk about Andrew. Andrew is my oldest child. He does not have autism. So when I finished Brandon's book, I thought I was done. And he said, "Mama, you doing a book about me this year?" And I was like, "No, for what? You don't have autism. You don't have a story." He said, "I do. I want to talk about siblings, normal developing siblings who have autistic kids, because nobody thinks about us." And that hit me in my head. He said, "Mom, you were so concerned about the kids who could not talk, you forgot about the one who could."
Oh, wow. What a moment. Oh my goodness.
It was it. And so I told him, with him being 17 years old, I said, "I will help you write it. But at 17 years old, you could be an author." And so I guided him through, and he wrote Andrew Does His Dance, all about how to show up for normal developing kids who have autistic siblings.
Yeah, I saw a media clip about it, and I love that he was in the classroom with a bunch of young children. It was, I think, an integrated classroom. So there were kids with different needs, and some who were more challenged than others, and some who really were, I think, sort of more typical, neurotypical children. And just you could see it immediately, his ease with which he was interacting with all the kids. He got them up dancing. So there's a story there, right? Where he's talking about that the Andrew Does His Dance is the way that he approached doing his chores, right?
Yes,
because
he dances doing his chores. And so we went through the 4 seasons. So he's dancing, raking leaves. He's dancing, taking out the trash. He's dancing, mowing the lawn. He's dancing, shoveling the snow. And he actually went viral. When he was shoveling the snow during a big snowstorm in Minnesota, I took a clip, posted it on social media, and we sitting there watching TV, and Michael Strahan says, "Play of the day from Cottage Grove, Minnesota, little Andrew Brundidge doing his dance." And I was like, "Come on through, Jesus." And I said, that's the ending for the book. That's it right there. And so many kids who are normal developing, who have autistic siblings, have sent notes and letters and cards and DMs through social media and text messages to let us know they felt seen, they felt heard, they felt loved. And so many parents said, "Yeah, thank you for reminding us that we have another child."
Yeah, I think it's a really, really important thing that you did there, and that Andrew did. And Andrew's speaking up for himself and using that story for himself, but also beautifully still for his siblings and for so many other family members. Beautiful story. Sheletta, we are out of time, but I just want to thank you for being on the show today. I know
it goes by too fast.
It goes quick. How do people buy the books? How do people find out more information about your work and get in touch with you if they would like to?
So the books are available everywhere books are sold. If you go to Barnes & Noble, if you go to your local bookstore, if you go to Amazon, they're all there.
Okay.
If you forget, go to my website, ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com. There's a link to the books to go to Amazon. Everybody's got Amazon, so I just send them there. But ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also where I talk about, some of the resources and services that I've found for my families that other families with autism can find. Combination key locks, grants, scholarships for the kids, free fences and trampolines and so many other things that families don't know exist are right there on that website at ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com. I don't want anybody to have to find out the hard way what I already know. So it's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You go on there and there's tons of resources and services available.
That's awesome. So that's ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com. You sharing the resources that you worked so hard to find with others is something that I see more and more happening, and I love it. And I think it's the way that we're going to move forward and help future generations just in the long run. And also best wishes to Andrew in college. Hopefully that also gives us hope that there's another, up and coming generation of people who are going to really go out of their way to understand and be open and accessible and kind to everyone in their lives. So what a role model, and best of luck to you and your family. Thank you so much for being on the show and telling your story.
Thank
Sheletta
you.
Brundidge, author and all-around autism mom, as you shared earlier. This is 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 36, a weekly presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. Join them for another edition of the show next weekend.